the digital age was unfolding before us. When we started, YouTube hadn't been invented. There was no broadband. If you wanted to watch one of our films, it took 10 minutes to download it. Watching it on real media, on dial-up, I mean, but by the time we finished, people were able to make digital stories on mobile phones. So in that 6 years, we went from it being technologically very heavy to being technologically much lighter. But also what happened was a whole perception about what the digital age meant had changed in that time. And the big I, as the creative director and the person who came up with the idea and basically recruited the team around me, or with assistance at the BBC, was able to recruit a team around my idea. What we believed in was this notion that it was a privilege to be able to broadcast, and that what you needed to do was to create a considered narrative where every word counted, where every cut and pan or zoom that you were doing around images meant something. And that because you then treated every fraction of a second with a degree of importance, you generated something that not only could be watched once, but had a high emotional content. You felt something when you saw this thing as a viewer, and you might want to look at it again. In fact, what we've seen happen is that hasn't been the model of how social media has developed. Social media developed the other way, which is that basically people just squirt off footage without ever fully understanding that editing is where the power lies. So the BBC, in about 2007, the BBC changed its attitude towards what it called user-generated content. It was no longer really interested in assisting people to make their own material for broadcast. What they were interested in was people sending in raw footage from their mobile phones whenever any news or whatever happened that they needed to be able to report. And so they set up a unit which absorbed all of this material out of the ether. People phoning up and saying, hey, that knifing that's just taken place, I've got some great footage of the car being towed away, blah, blah. Okay, send it in, and then they'd filter it to whichever department or whichever broadcast outlet they thought might want it.
So you were enabling people, whereas the BBC, when they changed their mind, were disenfranchising people, really, and taking away from them.
Yeah, I think that they instead of sticking to their guns, they reverted to type and became gatekeepers.
So go back to a previous question then. How did if things had gone your way and the BBC had not decided to change tack, how do you think that digital storytelling would have developed? I know it's a hypothetical question.
Well, no, I had a paper which I wrote and circulated to the high-ups at the BBC in Wales, saying what I thought we should do would be to start paying people small sums of money to run workshops, even if it was a workshop with 2 or 3 individuals. So someone who'd been on our workshop, proved that they could make a digital story, had the kit, because we were working very closely with the Welsh Assembly Government's digital inclusion initiative, where there was money available, and a lot of the places that we'd worked were then getting computers into their own institutions, like the Miners Institute in Blackwood, for instance, had a digital storytelling kit. We taught them how to use it. We told them what to buy. Welsh Assembly Government contributed to the funding of the buying of that kit. So Karen Lewis, who was our producer, was really on this. She was on it, and she was terribly good at dovetailing what we were doing with the Welsh Assembly Government initiatives around digital inclusion. And my plan would be that we'd start paying individuals to run workshops, and they would have to deliver, 4 or 5 digital stories a month. And then every now and then we'd haul them in for workshops and train some new people who could run it. And so very quickly you'd have all over Wales, you'd have little cells of people who were able to help others to make digital stories. And pretty soon it would be very easy for people to learn to do that for quite a small sum of money, in fact, in the wider scheme of things. And then, we'd have Wales would start having its own voice. And people outside of Wales would see, oh, look, the Welsh are all different. They're not just as we thought they were. Daffy was a Welshman stuff. They would see that we're people who live here and work here and grown up here, and they'd see the massive variety of who we are, and we'd have a voice, a small nation voice. Yes. And we were being copied. But I mean, we had 2 Norwegian students who had been at my university. One of them had been at my university, the other one in Bristol. Came and they made a wonderful. I can't pronounce it. It sounds like digitale fortelinga. They went back to Norway and did a big digital storytelling project there. But very, very accomplished young women, and other people copied and did what we. I began to feel it could work, and then, Mark Thompson was the new Director General. Greg Dyke was out. Greg Dyke was a big fan of ours.
So it was a dangerous idea, maybe. Enabling people, isn't it?
Enabling people is always dangerous, and it's sad because we now have, I don't know.
Well, we have corporations. YouTube is just an advertising medium, really.
Well, the problem is that we were using public sector broadcasting because we felt that public sector broadcasting was where this kind of work belonged. The problem is that it's all become commodified. Nowadays you turn on, Question Time or something, and instead of having send us in your digital story, it's send us, connect to Facebook and to Twitter. Yes. And to social media outlets which are commodified. They exist because they can generate money out of advertising. Yeah. And the public sector broadcasting was set up because it didn't have to depend on advertising. Yeah. So, it's kind of shot itself in the foot, I think. And, I feel really sad that, regional television in Britain
is non-existent.
It could be, we could have done, we were on the verge, another 4 years and I think we'd have turned the corner. But these things aren't done overnight. They have to be done carefully and gently. It's like when I was working as an artist in residence and I wanted to climb a factory chimney with a steeplejack. You can't just ring up and organise that over an afternoon. You've got to persuade someone to let you do that because they're, in a sense, risking their lives to help you to do it. All of these things take time. You have to win people round. You have to make people believe that it's something that they're going to enjoy doing and that it's going to be beneficial to them, and that having a voice is something that's really rather wonderful. Right. At the same time, you've got to beat back professional media people who just feel threatened by it. They feel their jobs are being taken by it, instead of which they could be facilitators.
Yes.
Isn't it wonderful to turn from being somebody who does media to people to being somebody who does media with people? That's the message that was our message. But, we lost. Yeah, I am defeated.
And are you very frustrated by that? Or are you...
yeah. At the time, it felt like failure. Yeah. When I went back to the university in 2006, it felt like failure. Yeah. But at the university, they welcomed me like a hero. Oh, you've done all this wonderful stuff. Working in the community is really, But I said, no, we haven't done what we should have done. We were a whisker. We're 7/8 of the way there to doing something that was going to be very special. A model that could be copied by small nations all over the world.
Yes.
And make Wales be something other than, because people always think it's okay to take the piss out of the Welsh, and it isn't. It really isn't okay. And the richness and variety of the lives that are lived in Wales, and the many little histories that all add up to this sort of wonderful gaggle of storytelling that exists in the ether that we were starting to tap into was magical. It's magical.